AI is going to definitely change how you live, work, and play. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. For the first time, it's actually threatening more the white collar
Hmm.
occupation as opposed to in the past. If you look at all the other human evolutions and revolutions, the industrial, the agricultural, all of these, they put a lot of fear. There was a massive fear factor in this revolution.
Are you ready to transform your life? This is a no nonsense show helping immigrants like you create generational wealth, even while working full time. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Saket Jeong.
I'm going to hit record. Let's record it. 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome back, my Great to Wealth listeners. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce to you Michelle Jeong. She is the founder and CEO for Fire Capital, an amazing woman. We have my background and her background has so many crossovers. Both of us were strategy consultants, problem solvers to begin with. We have some crossovers in the tech world, and now we have crossovers in the syndication world, personal development. It's like so much in common. I had to bring Michelle here to share her story. So what I want to focus on today, or bring your attention today, is we're going to be talking a lot about the role that AI plays. Michelle's a syndicator. She does a lot of great stuff, and we'll also delve into that. But really, the focus I want to see is how is AI changing our world? And Michelle is an expert in that domain. Like, you know what, we'll give you some tips and advice on how you may be able to incorporate, not just in the investing journey, but in your personal journey. How can you make your personal lives better with AI? That's what we're going to start with. And then we're going to delve into a little bit more into the syndication world, investing world, which we always do. And then we'll see where the conversation goes. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure. And thank you, audience, for listening in. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of the discussion in terms of AI, as well as overall economic trends and all the other good stuff that we'll dive into today on the call. So
I am very confident you'll add tremendous value. So Michelle, let's start with the conversation on when you hear the term migrate to wealth. What does that mean to you?
So it's as we had discussed in a previous call, I am actually a firstborn generation American. I come from an East Asian background, Chinese immigrants, parents. And so when I think of migrate to wealth, there's so many different layers that come into it. I think of immediately the journey my parents came in terms of pursuing their American dream, establishing a family here, starting from nothing. And I also think of the concept of wealth in a general idea of that rich does not equal wealth. Wealth to me is very much a type of funded contentment, and it's our ability as parents, as adults, pursuing our own individual form of what makes us happy, and that is the migration, that journey towards what we define our individual wealth is. So whether that is pursuing a van life journey, or whether it's pursuing the private jets and
Right.
own yacht journey, everyone has a different price tag. So I think of it. I think definitely of both sides.
Love that. So Michelle, let's actually think through it. Has that definition of wealth for you evolved? I'm assuming that's your current definition of wealth. Let's go back in time when you were 16, 17, 18, when you thought you're going to have a lot of money or whatever your passions were for wealth at that time. How has that definition evolved for you?
It's definitely evolved. It's a great question. It's definitely evolved from one of creating my own journey, creating my own independence. So I'm kind of tying in a couple of things here to answer your question, but the 16, 17, 20-year-old, well, I mean, I wasn't really thinking of, how I was going to build wealth, to be honest with you. But the jobs that we were as listening to our immigrant parents were very much, white collar jobs coming in here. become a doctor, become an accountant.
Right.
I think I disappointed my parents a little.
I became a consultant.
Consultant was definitely not one of them.
Right.
And software, the whole industry didn't exist back then. But
Right.
but at this, so my sister became the doctor, so that covered.
That's good. At least somebody in the house who came that. That's good. That's good.
But so it's basically one thing I really learned. I only learned after the MBA program, and that was the Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I really wished I was given that book when I was young, because it really taught us about the difference between the W-2, the rat race, and creating your own wealth, your own journey. And that's really also one of the reasons why FIRE Capital exists. I mean, a lot of us have heard of the FIRE journey and the FIRE concept, financial independence, retire early. There's all these different flavors to that. For me, FIRE Capital stands for financial independence through real estate. So that's a different take on FIRE, but that's my journey. And so if I had to give one lesson to my 20-year-old, that would have been that book, The Rich Dad Poor Dad, about the difference between the great engineering job and the W-2. That great salary doesn't necessarily equal wealth. That doesn't necessarily, that keeps you in the rat race.
And I think that's great. And I think you're doing fairly well. You've already achieved the wealth to a great extent, but of course, the wealth, you can never achieve wealth because it changes. The wealth definition changes as you get closer to that goal. And it's not really like chasing money, which is what I like the way to define it as. It's not about chasing money. Also, never ends. Because if you have $1,000, you want 10,000. If you have 10,000, you want 1,000,000. If you want 1,000,000, you got 1,000,000,000. This never ends. If you have 1,000,000,000 now, you want to be the Elon Musk. It's just that you keep going and going. Oh, it never finishes. I don't know who Elon Musk compares himself to next, but I'm sure he can find some other person to compare against. So that just never ends. But the beauty of defining the wealth the way we just defined, it's really, even if the journey is endless, it's very productive, it's very satisfying, it's very pro-life, right? Kind of like it's going to fuel your life rather than take the life away from you. That's really where I think it's important.
Yeah, it's very
yeah, that's a great way to put that. So Michelle, tell us about the AI journey then. How did AI fit into your wealth journey?
So it's funny because if you asked me when I left the tech world in 2017, if I'd be back in tech and thinking about it, I wouldn't. I'd be scratching my head and what are you talking about? I'm full on real estate, but AI's been this massive buzzword in the last year and a half, and unfortunately, there's a lot more artificial in AI than intelligence part of it.
Yeah, that's fair. So fair.
I felt compelled to kind of help people kind of look through the fog that it's presented itself and go, okay, a lot of us are at an age where we've seen the big boom and bust cycles in tech at least one or two times. And so I feel that pretty strongly that this is just another boom that we're going through, and which a lot of folks are just slapping on the AI strategy, just like in the early 20s, people slapped on the .com strategy, and all of a sudden their stock price was supposed to increase by multiples. AI is going to definitely change how you live, work, and play. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. For the first time, it's actually threatening more the white collar occupation, as opposed to in the past. If you look at all the other human evolutions and revolutions, the industrial, the agricultural, all of these, they put a lot of fear. There was a massive fear factor in this revolution. Some jobs were lost and a lot of jobs were gained. So we're at that pivot cycle right now where there's a lot more fog, there's a lot more fear around this. However, it is true. I mean, it will impact different sectors differently. Last year, there was a huge strike in LA amongst actors because they were fearing that AI was going to replace their jobs, all the B actors' jobs, because they're just going to fill it with artificial actors to lower the costs. If you're around the Bay Area, you're going to see a lot of driverless taxis, Cruise and Waymo, actually just Waymo right now, currently.
Right.
But it's bizarre. So there are different ways that AI is going to address people's needs. I would say at this point, even looking at generative AI, it's meant to enhance jobs right now as opposed to fully replace.
Michelle, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I think there's so many interesting things for the benefit of everyone. Can we define AI? Right? What is AI? Because a code is not an AI, right? When I say code, if you're saying that something is going to match a pattern and the pattern is not evolving, it's a fixed set of patterns. For example, most of you are aware that I have a venture capital fund. I got a deal sent to me the other day saying we have templatized an AI model for something. And as I started looking into it, I'm like, you're basically doing matching. And it's predefined matching, right? He's like, yeah, definitely. I'm like, so that's not AI, is that AI? And we went into the back and forth of that. So I think it's important for us to know so that people can follow this episode. How do you define it?
So I consider AI an umbrella. So if you take a diagram, you look at an umbrella, you have on one end the simple rinse repeat. So we're talking about probably something a little bit better than your macros and your Excels. So some of those very simple tools, rinse, repeat, and create enough intelligence around it to basically synthesize and summarize different macros in Excel. And then you have on the very far end more generative, advanced learning language. So we're talking about what I consider, Waymo is a perfect example. It's integrated hardware, software, and also kind of like the patterns. It's supposed to be smart enough to react, although that's somewhat questionable.
Yeah.
That's the far end in which you are. It's just advanced language tools in which integrates hardware, software.
What's generative AI? What's the word generative AI mean?
Generative is exactly the word generative. So it basically can learn on top of each other. So it takes a case scenario, it learns from those situations, it applies to the next similar case, and then it makes certain assumptions. Sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're right, but they try to guess. And a lot of what currently I see as AI is it's in your best case a very eager, I guess, teenager or toddler that wants to please their parents. They want what the parent wants as an output or as an answer, and it gives an answer, because that's where the hallucinations, that's where unfortunately the cons in AI exist right now, are those hallucinations.
So who is a parent? Who is a parent in that people, somebody like you and I who are using, let's say, for example, everyone's aware of Chat GPT. So let's just use that as an example.
Yeah.
And if you're out of Chat GPT, you need to wake up from a slumber. It's taken over the AI. That's what made AI a household name now. So if you look at Chat GPT, when we say parent, are we talking about Sam Altons of the world who created it? Or are you talking about people like you and I who are giving it some requests?
You and I giving it, any person who's typing a request, they're trying to figure out, AI is trying to figure out, okay, read your mind, trying to read exactly what kind of output you're looking for.
So how would that happen if that software doesn't know me or you? How does it try to please you without knowing you? Or they already know it? Or are you saying that without you even knowing, they already know you?
Through use cases. So for instance, you give it a prompt, you say, okay, this doesn't work. You enter another question. You can enter it just like you would another person in the room, the same question. It's a dialogue. They learn from that dialogue and they try to triangulate
Got it.
Based on your different prompts and inputs and likes, what you end up liking, what you end up saying is satisfactory. Unfortunately, though, another con to current Chat GPT 4, 5, etc., Bard, Claudes of the world is that there is still a lot of not just hallucinations that I talked about, but also biases. And so you have to look at it with a human filter, without a doubt.
Hey, let's talk about the biases a little more. What does that mean for you?
Well, I can give you a real life example. I could try to do a Thanksgiving card using, DALL-E 2, which is part of the Chat GPT 4 suite. I seem to really like hipster Caucasian guys with beards for some reason. And, I'm literally putting down, I want, a mix, diverse age ranges, diverse cultures, diverse. And then it gave me all African Americans. And I couldn't figure out how to get them. I literally spelled it out. I would like, 2 Latinos. I would like 2 Asians. I would like,
Wow.
It could not understand that. It could not give me it. Just even at how specific I provided, it could not give me what I was looking for.
But how do you put a human filter? That's something is great, right? Because that's a visual filter. You can easily apply that. But if somebody is looking for some information on ChatGPT, and let's say I ask the question, give me an article about X, Y, and Z. Give me an article about diversity. And most of the content is correct, except some of those specificity, which talks about diversity for them. It could be using your example as a basis for that there's only 2 races, Caucasians and African Americans. That's it, right?
Yeah.
How do you apply human filter to things that these are things we're aware of because we're talking about it? But how do you apply human filter for topics that we have no sense of?
I think that like any good source or any researcher would recommend is that they look at their source content of what ChatGPT is providing first. So find out and trust but verify, the military term of everything. So you always double check the sources. You look at other sources. I mean, I always look at who the source is coming from, and can I get it double verified through a separate independent source?
Got it. Okay, now I think that makes sense. So I'm going to put some words into your mouth. You tell me if that makes sense or not. I think what we're basically saying is use these tools as a starting point, not as a deterministic end, right?
Yes.
And then figure out what you want. Like anything else, if you were to delegate a task, you're not going to blindly accept it. You're going to review the output. And that's all you're doing. You're delegating it to ChatGPT. It'll get you farther than yourself much faster. But that doesn't mean it's accurate. The accuracy still lies in the eyes of the beholder of what you feel is accurate. And that's an important piece. So, Michelle, let's jump forward. How are you using AI? And I'll give you two different distinct buckets here. How are you using AI in your personal life? And how are you using AI in your business life?
Well, the 2 tools that I always use in my personal as well as business. Personal, if you haven't signed up for ChatGPT 4, that would be an easy, low-hanging fruit to start with. And the reason is because it gives you access to not only the OpenAI platform, but also, you have advanced analytics embedded. You have APIs connected to it, and on top of it, you have access to DALL-E. I'm not necessarily promoting. I'm not sponsored by any of these. Just so that you know.
Let's actually pause for this tool because it's a very important tool. How can people use Chat GPT to enhance their life? How can they use DALL-E to enhance their life? Because not everyone needs a graphical image being produced, right? So help me understand that for our listeners. What are the use cases you're using it for? And then why should they pay $20 a month or whatever that is for ChatGPT 4?
Sure. I use it as a start point, as what you said earlier. I use it as an idea generator. I think it's a fantastic idea generator.
Even in your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a Thanksgiving card, for instance,
Yeah.
right? So I tried to get some ideas using Dolly on a customize something very personal, because this was the first time that I could actually create something that was a little bit more personal but fast.
Yeah.
And okay, so it didn't work this time, but I'm optimistic that maybe it'll get
It will change. It'll change. It has to change.
it'll generate a better card for next year. So on a personal level, you could use it for cards. You can use it for announcements. I used it actually recently to try to take a trip with my daughters to Asia, and I was using Chat GPT to give me, okay, I have 10 days. I'm going to be in these cities. Help map an itinerary.
Yeah.
Give me. And it didn't work because it was more for like older people. My kids are 16 and 18. So you could ask and prompt and tailor it to, teenagers. And it's a great tool for as a starting off point. Absolutely.
Perfect. So let's move forward. Chat GPT, Dolly, great examples. And I've used them for similar purposes. Actually, it can generate a great image for social media as well, for personal or professional. It doesn't matter. You can give it anything. It can basically enhance what you want to say. And more importantly, if English is not your native language, you can actually give it a text and say that make it better or whatever, however you want to say that. This is not a prompt engineering lesson. That's a completely different course. We're basically saying that you can give any input, and depending upon what your ask is, it'll either refine it, it'll suggest something else. It's all depending upon what question. It's like, I think, tell me if this is right. ChatGPT is like your teacher. The teacher is only going to give you the response. It's only going to give you the response to the question you ask. They have a lot more knowledge, but if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer.
Yes. It's like an assistant for me.
Assistant, even better. Yeah.
So if I need some help to bounce ideas off of or speed things along, heck, I could even throw in some recipes and say, okay, help me enhance this.
Right.
Or what it would be a good substitute if I'm out of X ingredient.
Correct.
So
love that. I think ChatGPT has innumerable use cases. Once you start using, your mind's going to explode. If you haven't used it already, hopefully everyone has tried it. If not ChatGPT 4.0, at least the free version, 0.5 or whatever. I can't remember the versions now.
3.5, yeah.
3.5. So let's talk about the next tool that you use in your daily life.
So, we talked about ChatGPT 4, which I use all the time. And I also use the note-taking tool. So I know a lot of us are still semi-remote or completely remote. And so having a note-taking tool, whether that be Firefly's Otter or even Zoom just came out with their own note-taking tool embedded, I think it's a huge productivity enhancer. I'm not constantly trying to remember what I need to do. It's all summarized. It's shareable. So that is a definite win in terms of the pocketbook, because you don't have to have an assistant take the notes, write it up, send it out, etc.
Right.
And it allows me to focus on making actual connections to people as opposed to busy taking notes, so I can get things done faster and more efficiently.
Love that. Any other tool that I'm sorry, I'm going to keep until you tell me enough. What other tools are there?
I mean, a lot of people swear by just like the writing. So there is Grammarly AI, which is out there. You've got Notion AI as well for those people that love writing and are looking. Perhaps we all have that dream of writing our book.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of writers swear by Grammarly as well as Notion, and those I think are great. It depends on your different hobbies. There are great ones for presentations. Canva, beautiful, are out there. But
Canva an AI tool?
Excuse me?
Is Canva an AI tool?
It was never originally an AI tool. However, that's a great question that you're asking, because more and more companies that are non-AI specific are now launching their AI, enhanced version. You've got Box, you've got Dropbox, which were just pure storage service providers. Now they have Box AI and Dropbox, etc. So more and more, you're going to have these artificial AI tools embedded into your regular technology.
Got it. And are these similar tools you use for your business as well, or your business is surrounded by a different set of tools?
I use Chat GPT and notetaking AI tools all the time in my business. It's some of the low-hanging fruits I suggest to those around me who ask. There are other AI tools out there that will help a syndicator or someone who's a real estate investor. On the underwriting side, for those there are several out there. You've got, tools of different price points. Intel Cree is one of them. Archer, Click AI, Red IQ. They all have their own type of versions of writing AI tools. And then you have on the back end, Lease AI for those who are looking to enhance their property management services. They're great in terms of providing 24/7 lead generation as well as response. So they have chatbots when there isn't a property manager to help the scheduling of the tour or to answer any of the top FAQs. It can do that 7 days a week, 24/7. So it has a dramatic and positive impact on your response rates as well as your lead generation. I had a friend of mine who, within a week of deploying Lease, for instance, saw an increase by 18% of the tours, bookings of tours. And the response rate was definitely higher than that of a human in terms of just getting.
Of course, they don't take a break. They don't get tired.
Tired, yes.
Yeah, they don't have to eat. So I think that makes sense. Michelle, how are you seeing your companies? I don't know if you have a metric to share with us, before AI versus post AI or during AI. There's never going to be a post AI because there's always going to be an AI now.
There's a lot of it has to do with productivity. A lot of it has to do with, in terms of, does it have a direct impact on the revenue? Mm-hmm. So I mentioned the two tools, Lease AI and Lease. They definitely have an impact on both sides of the equation, on the revenues as well as the expenses.
Sure.
On the revenue side, if you see a huge uptick of bookings as well as applications and their move-ins because of this, that's money in the bank.
Yeah.
So if you could increase your capacity by even 2 to 3 more applications and move-ins per month, depending how large your portfolio is, I mean, that's a real ROI we're talking about. Plus, on top of it, the cost savings from not having to employ another human being to even answer a fraction of coverage, that's, again, money saved. So the ROI there is real. I mean, that would be a perfect case study scenario for AI, like the good things that AI can do. On the flip side, you have to really, really be concerned, and that's, again, circling back to the human filter and making sure that you apply good governance to this, is housing will be increasingly butting heads with AI in terms of, fair housing standards. So you have to be extra careful. That's where the human filter becomes absolutely mission critical.
No, it does. It does, especially with the example you gave of Dolly before. It only understands diversity to the extent that it's being taught. Doesn't mean it's perfect. So you can't expect the tool to be politically correct and be compliant if the compliance data was never fed to the tool. It can only, as I always think about it, is like it's we are as intelligent as the exposure we have, right? It's, if you pick somebody from a tribe and expect them to understand the 84, 85 different gender types right now that exist, you can't expect them to understand that. It's not their fault. It has to be brought up to speed, and once it's up to speed, they'll be fine. But if you just take them out of the tribe all of a sudden and put them in an environment like this, they won't understand, right? They only understand male and female. That's all they understand. But then the other varieties, which are all important, that the modern world has introduced, somebody has to give them the vernacular. I think AI is no different. AI is we're giving our kids the exposure, same exposure the tool needs. But now I think to your point about governance is that it's important who is giving it the information, right? And are they giving the information in the right context?
That's an excellent point. It's not just who's giving the information, but also who's checking, so that's fact check.
Yeah.
So it has to be
great. I think like anything else, technology always has pros and cons, right? I don't think the world's going to die anytime soon. AI is not going to take over the world, but it's a conversation that it's a very. I have two girls, 8 and 10. There's a constant conversation about AI. Should I use it to do my homework? Right?
Oh, I know.
Is that the right thing to do? And that's a very interesting answer, because you don't want to push them away in leveraging a tool, especially as you're looking for as an entrepreneur. Here's a tool that can 10x productivity, but you're telling them it's a cheating, so don't do it. And that's what they're learning, right? So it's a very interesting balance that you have to manage and maintain about how can they discern where they should use it and where they should not use it, and to what extent.
And this breaches into the philosophical question of, at what point are you ready to know, is the information you're given garbage, or is the information, and how to check to see if it's garbage.
Correct.
So as adults post some experience, you hope that you're reading this information. It's like any information that we get on through the media. What is garbage and what isn't?
Correct.
We have to check the sources and see if we can triangulate using other independent sources. And then maybe there is some substance to it. A lot of us want to take the easy route and just accept what's given. And that's the danger. That's where human intelligence is going to be much more required, and just disseminating between, thinking like sheep and really proactively looking for the tools that enhance our lives and make the work that we do that much faster and better.
Perfectly, Michelle. And thank you for bringing that up. So, Michelle, for somebody who's in their wealth creation journey, and wealth in terms of financial, because I'm bringing it back to the syndication world right now, and the real estate world, how can they use AI? Not as a syndicator. Syndicator would be to enhance and bring more productivity at the business level. Have you seen tools and AI being used for passive investors?
Absolutely. So you can easily use Chat GPT to write letters, to your partners, for instance, on any issues that you might have, any topics you have, communication with your broker. So it could be, any brokerage, Fidelity, Quest, Entrust. If you have self-directed, you can use it to write emails, professional emails to your colleagues and other, depending on how passive and active you are. If a lot of those who are passive investors in my group also have their single family homes or Airbnb, so you're still having to write letters in compliance to your lawyers, or, it's great. It's great for first drafts. Let's put it this way. It's fantastic for first draft, gives you an idea, gives you structure, and this is where you do the iteration, the fine-tuning, the customization that's needed to make it your own.
Perfect. And Michelle, I know you have developed an AI-based software which could help passive investors. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So my background has been econ. I'm a bit of an econ nut. I studied that both in graduate school and undergrad. And so I triangulated kind of like the three things that I love very much, economics, technology, and real estate. And with the help of a developer friend of mine, created an AI tool that I would love to offer some of your listeners. The first 10 that reach out to me directly, I'd be happy to give them access to. It's a very simple tool on how to identify using the large economic indicators, population growth, median household income, job growth, home prices over a certain period of time, but also climate change issues and landlord or tenancy laws. And so I folded all these different factors and put it together into a nice AI format. It will do the analytics for you and compare the different target cities. It's focused on the top 300 cities across the US only. So if you're looking to invest in or look at moving to a small rural town in Wyoming, it's not going to give you that. But any of the larger cities across the country, it will give you those metrics.
Yeah, I think I'll just add some context to it. So whenever you're investing in a property, in a deal, in an opportunity, it could be real estate or not, you're looking at some economic indicators, right? So, for example, if you're buying a real estate, you want to see that are people moving in there or are people moving out of there? So is there a positive population growth or negative population growth, right? So it's important for you to understand that. Same's true for jobs. Are the jobs growing? Is it becoming the Detroit in 1980s or is it becoming the Detroit in 2023? And the patterns and things change, right? So things like that, you need access. Now, can you find access to this information online? You can. Just like, can you write your own research report? You can. Right? But going back to the premise of the AI, the premise of the AI is it'll help you create some leverage in your existing world, right? And that's really a tool like that with Michelle can play a big role into it, where you can plug in, you can go to a website which has already consolidated all the information, and it's on a real-time basis. It's not like there's a lag, and also giving you a starting analysis on it. I've used the tool. I'm still continuing to use the tool. I'm still learning a lot on the tool itself. But I would encourage to at least have a conversation with Michelle, reach out, and then see how this tool could be helpful in your journey as a passive or as an active. Because even as a passive investor, you can take your sponsor's word it's a good market, right? The biggest responsibility for a passive investor is to vet the sponsor, right? And if your sponsor has picked a wrong market for you, doesn't mean it's a wrong market. It doesn't suffice your needs and your goals. That may or may not be the right sponsor for you. Or it may be because you learned something else from the sponsor's criteria that but you can't challenge the sponsor if you don't have the data, right?
Yeah.
That's where the data comes into power. And you can pressure test the sponsor saying, why not this market? You picked an XYZ city in Texas, why not ABC, right? What's the difference between the two? You're getting into this conversation armed with data, right? That's an important matter. Of course, as a syndicator or as an active investor, it doesn't matter again, in Airbnb or whatever you want to pick, these data are good indicators of how to move forward. Right? So I would say that regardless of you use Michelle's tool or not, I would encourage you to at least explore it. Regardless of not, you need, as an investor, you want to take control of the data. You want to understand the data so that you can move forward with that. Michelle, thank you again for the very generous offer. I'm hoping that's at least the first 10 and hopefully way more, they are able to take advantage of that offer. So thank you again for offering to that, our investors, to our listeners. Michelle, we're moving towards the end of our show. There are a few questions we always end up with. I think the first question you already answered, but I'm going to ask it again just to make sure that people are expecting that question, which is, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
I definitely, the first expression is buck up, little camper. It's going to be all right.
Right. 100%. 100%.
Because we always have a way, especially at that age, of over dramatizing the world. And
even now, I would say even now that my life sucks or everything is going to end. When if you talk to somebody who's ahead of us in terms of wisdom and age, they're going to tell us you have a long life to live. You'll be okay.
You'll be fine. Exactly. And also, there are two other things. First, you are enough. And the third is remain your authentic. Stay true to who you are, to your path.
Right.
And I've been very, very fortunate to have an amazing tribe that I'm surrounded by, and that gives me all of that. So,
That's beautiful.
Yes.
And Michelle, the next question is going to be around, where do you feel there's a gap in humanity right now? Where should humanity as a whole should migrate towards?
The one word that comes to mind when you ask that question is the word connection. I think there's been a lack of connection that has created so much mistrust, fear, inability for us as individuals to connect with others. If and it's needed. I mean, that's one of the key components to achieving real happiness. Is the research is out there. There's been this general malaise, especially post-pandemic, about needing to feel connected, and so that would be one thing I wish we could focus on.
Yeah, no, I think if COVID told us one thing, it told us a lot of things. It was one thing was, a lot of people were severely depressed because they couldn't talk to other people. They were not comfortable in their own presence. Right now, there's a whole philosophical discussion. Why weren't you? Because you should be able to enjoy your own company, and if you're not, maybe you're the wrong company. So maybe we need to fix that company. Right? That's a completely different argument. Maybe a different podcast. Maybe a series of podcasts. But this is not a podcast for that. We're going to talk about the companionship and the connection is very important. Either is it with yourself or with others, right? That connection is very important. If you're missing that connection in life, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much success you have, you're not going to feel fulfilled. So thank you again for saying that, Michelle. The next question really is, sorry, what was that, Michelle?
No, I mean, that is one of the definitions when tying it back to the migrate to wealth. That is one of the definitions of wealth. I mean, it's
right.
Who you share it with, the people you surround, doing things that matter with people that matter. So,
no, 100%. So, Michelle, one more question is around. We've been talking for the last almost 45 minutes, so approximately. Who's counting? But what's one thing that I didn't get a chance to ask you that you feel is going to impact our listeners?
Well, this is also a part of the longer conversation of the meaningful life. Like we just started the 1st of February, so things, a lot of people's New Year's resolutions are starting to kind of frazzle, etc. And really, it's the idea of what is staying authentic to yourself, to your own personal goals, and not what is extrinsic. So looking from within of how do you underwrite, or the question would be, whose life script are you living? I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but I'll leave
the podcast. We'll do it one time. At some point, we'll do that podcast too, because it's an important podcast.
But that's truly the question. Whose life script are you living? Is it that of the external forces, social pressure? Is it from what the media thinks you should be saying, what your parents think that you should be doing? Or what is it? If you had to write your own life script, what would it look like?
Correct. I completely agree. I think, as you said, it's a much broader conversation because there's a lot deeper conversations that need to have to even explore that at the surface.
Yes.
But maybe, as I said, we'll have that conversation at some point. Can't promise when, but we'll have it at some point. Michelle, if somebody wants to reach out to you, especially for the tool or amazing things you're doing in the real estate investing world, where can they find?
They can reach me through my website. It's investingwithfire.com. And you could book a 15-minute call right there on my website. We could go through some intros. You could also subscribe because I write about lots of different things, whether that is tech on AI or economic trends, where the Fed is going in terms of, as we know from yesterday's announcements, they aren't going to probably make the cut earlier versus later. So I do a lot of, for crystal ball of forecasts and assumptions based on my background, as well as real estate. If you're interested in anything that I'm invested in, feel free to book a call. I'm happy to reach out and chat.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you again for your valuable time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think the AI world we're just scratching the surface for AI. It's going to evolve much faster than we all can imagine. So I would recommend and ask everyone to pay attention to what's happening in the AI world, because if you're not paying attention, somebody else is going to. And if they pay attention and you're not, your voice is not going to be part of that conversation. Definitely stay abreast on that. It's going to be helping. You're going to be doing yourself a favor, your next generation a favor. With that, thank you again for the listeners to staying till the end. If you're hearing this part of the conversation, that means you stayed through till the end. So thank you again for doing that. This show would not be possible without your commitment and your support to listening to the information. Our guest is as good as a value you get from them. So thank you again for giving us your most valuable resource, your time. Michelle, thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you got value from this episode, you might consider sharing this content with a friend. But most importantly, be sure to take action on what you've learned. One way you can take the next step is to connect directly with Saket on an investor call. That link is waiting for you in the show notes below.